Hey, welcome back, parents. Thank you for sharing our show with others. We are hitting some new download records, and it's because of you. You have been texting them out and emailing them out to people in your network, and we are so, so grateful. So please, if today's episode blesses you in any way, please be sure to share it with those in your circle. Okay. You know how we always talk about those critical few things that we need to focus on when it comes to raising kids? Well, why do we talk about that? Because it's not possible as a parent to do it all, to cover everything. So we really want to focus on doing the right things. And I got to tell you, our oldest child, Parker, just left home this week. He flew the nest. I sent the first birdie out of the nest, my husband and we were giving each other a hug and waving at him as he pulled out of the driveway. And I tell you what, it is amazing the things that go through your mind when you're waving goodbye to your child. So I was reflecting on a letter that I wrote him and gave him the morning that he left. And the message was really simple. You are loved no matter what. Just as God the Father will welcome you back and never leave you, you are welcome back at our home and you will always have a place in our lives. So, parents, one thing that is critical in raising a child is that they have a deep level of connection with you. If they know that they're safe and secure at home, everything else becomes easier for them. So today on our show, I have a guest with us who has developed a tool for kids and parents to use to help deepen their connection and their bond. So welcome to the Families of Character show, Katie Merrill.
Thank you for having me. I'm so excited.
Katie, I am all about the practical tools to help us with those critical few activities that we need to be doing to raise kids of great character and kids who are well bonded and securely attached. As a therapist for 20 years, I am all about a tool that helps with this kind of stuff. And you have developed one of these practical tools we can use with our kids. And that's why I wanted to bring you on our show. So, tell us a little bit about your family and this amazing tool that you developed.
Yeah, so I'm a mom of three girls. So they're 8, 6, and 5. And like all parents, I'm constantly searching for ways and tools to help me have a stronger connection with them and develop more empathetic conversation and communication with them. Um, I'm a huge believer that if I can just set the stage now and that they can trust me with their big thoughts and feelings and emotions, that when we get into the teenage years, it's going to be a lot easier for them to kind of express things. So I created the shared journal, and it's a journal for parents and kids to share. And what makes our journal a little bit different than the ones that are on the market is there's no prompts. So there's no questions or answers that you specifically have to answer. So it's a really organic way for you guys to have conversations about whatever is happening in your lives. And originally, when I created the journals, I was thinking that me and my kids would use this and that parents would use this for like tough conversations, the ones that are hard to have face to face, or as your kids get older, maybe they have little mess ups or they heard something and they're really nervous to bring it to you and look you in the eye and talk about it. And I thought, oh, this would be a great way for them to kind of introduce things to me that's happening in their lives. But it's really morphed into so much more. And it's become a really sweet outlet for us just to communicate and grow and learn more about each other.
Okay, so a shared journal. So tell us a little bit about this. Do you have a copy that you can show? If you're watching on YouTube, be sure to tune in. Or if you're not watching, you can always catch us on the Families of Character Show YouTube channel. So show us on screen, Katie, this shared journal. I've looked at it online and it is gorgeous.
Thank you. Well, okay, so I've got two. There's one for dads specifically, and then there's one for moms, and they each come in the same colors. And so I wanted to create something that was keepsake quality. because one of the things that I've noticed when writing in them with my own kids is that I'm able to put in stories that we've experienced together, and I want them to be able to have this and for it to last when they become a mom themselves, and they can read the lessons that we went through or just like small little things that happened in our day. And so all of our journals start off with, ways that you can use this and the benefits of shared journaling. And then I wanted to make sure that if you are ever stuck in conversations, that we do offer like 20 conversation starters and responses that are, really empathetic, that kind of get you started. If your kid tells you something that you weren't expecting and you're not quite sure how to respond in a way that's going to keep them talking, and then there's also, responses and ways for, you guys to start the conversations off. And then there's a My Letter to You page where you can really set the intentions that you have and what you want you and your child to get out of having the journal. And then what makes our journals different, like I said, they're blank pages. But on the bottom of each page, there are 3 quick response guides. So there's a write to me, a let's talk, and an I need. So let's say my children, for example, sometimes they'll write me a note and they'll check the I need and then they'll write in a hug. And that's really all that they need. They don't want to keep talking about it, or they don't, want me to keep harping on whatever lesson we're talking about. And they really just need more of a physical connection.
Mm.
And sometimes they write things and they're like, they want me to come and talk to them. Or sometimes they write to me and they're like, I want to see what she has to say first before I see her face to face. So
Yes.
they'll just text like, hey, you know what? Just write to me first. And especially if they're going through something where it's like their emotions are a little heightened, they're
Hmm.
like they need that time to kind of internalize and calm down. The write to me option is really great because it allows both of us the time to think about what we want to say and how we want to say it, and then communicate with each other. So it's a really great supplemental tool. It's not taking away in any way from face to face communication. It's just a way to bridge the gaps in communication that you may have with your child.
I love this so much. As a
Yeah.
therapist for 20 years and seeing the division and the disconnection and the miscommunication between parents and their kids, this is such a beautiful, like you said, bridge between some of those big conversations that they don't want to have in person or face to face. And just even for the small things, and like you said, the memories that you
Mm-hmm.
want to keep by writing these stories and experiences to each other. So, this is a journal that says hi mom or hi dad on the front, and
Mm-hmm.
the goal is to write in it, pass it back and
Mm-hmm.
forth, and do it at whatever pace is comfortable
Whatever
for you and
pace,
your
yeah.
child.
You know,
Yes.
so you can create a schedule if you want, like, like, hey, like your child, or let's say you're a split home and your child leaves it, they take it with them when they're at dad's house or mom's house. And then when they come back and you flip flop, then you've got, their writings while they were away. And it's a really sweet way to stay connected. And yeah, and one of the things that I love about it that I struggle as a parent with my tone of voice. So I can be giving them, telling them something, and I think that I'm coming across very encouraging, but they
Yes.
see it as like, oh, mom's coming down on me. And so one of the things I love about the journal is I'm able to give them lessons or at least explain where I'm coming from, and there's no tone of voice to it. And so I found that that's been very, very helpful.
Yes, yes. You give them an opportunity to look at it in text first, right? In
Right.
written form first. You know what else I love about this, Katie, is um, just the handwriting aspect of it.
Hmm.
We've had people on our show to talk about the importance of taking what's on your mind and putting it onto paper, and the science behind how that frees you up so that you don't have this mental load that you're carrying around. And
Hmm.
so to be able to take those things that you think about as a parent and you're going, oh man, really want to talk to him about this, or oh, we've got to have that conversation about that, instead
Hmm.
of keeping that on this kind of spinning loop in your mind and hoping that you remember to have the conversation. You
Right.
could jot that down in the journal and then pass that back and forth
Hmm.
so that it's not weighing you down, and that you remind yourself and your child that this is something you want to chat about.
Yeah, exactly. And our lives are so busy these days, between extracurriculars and work and school, and especially if you have multiples, their voices can, whether intentionally or not, can get lost in the day. And they may not have or find the time, in the day to sit you down and say, this is really bothering me. And I need to talk about this. And I don't know how. Or I've even noticed, that by the end of the week, my girls are just combusting. Like they've just like everything that they've dealt with the week that they just kind of pushed aside, it just causes a meltdown. And so it's been a really great way for them to at least get it out of their head, like you said, get it on paper. And there's that sort of, therapeutic aspect of it. And then they can pass it to me and let me know how they want how they want me to respond to it. And then I can find the time in my day to respond back to it and give it back to them. But that's so right because I've noticed, I've been journaling for probably over 20 years. And it when you have these thoughts in your mind, and your mind can just go on a roller coaster. I mean, it can just get away from you really fast. And when you do take the time to sit down and put a physical word to how you're feeling or what you're thinking about, it makes it so much more manageable because now you're like, okay, now I can see it in physical form. It's not just this abstract thought that's just floating around, coming in and out of my consciousness. And when you see it in physical form, and I've noticed this with my kids too, it's like, oh, okay, that's not as big of a deal as I thought. So it's
Yes.
been really therapeutic for me and for them.
Two things I think of when I hear you talk about the written form and just putting your thoughts and emotions into writing. One is a little catchphrase that we use in therapy all the time: name it to tame it.
Right?
Right? If
Yeah.
you have some big emotions that is causing a lot of distress, the thing that's missing is how to explain it, right?
Hmm.
What are the words I need to really explain how my body is feeling inside? And so, if you can get used to putting a word to it and kind of scanning your mind to figure out, is this, am I terrified? Am I
Hmm.
embarrassed? Is this nerve wracking? And then you can pick that word and then put it into writing and eject that from your mind out onto paper.
Hmm.
Then you're able to do something about it, right? When you can see your problem in written form in front of you, you have the ability to move towards a solution. Or, like you said at the bottom of the page, how there's those three prompts that ask you kind of what you need. You can decide, do I just need a hug? Do I need some verbal validation? And to train kids at a young age to do this method of like sitting with their feelings, writing them, and naming what they're going through, and then getting someone in their close relationship to buy in on this issue and to relate
Hmm.
to them in this way is just awesome. Like,
Hmm.
whoa, the mental health of adults would be like just amazing in 10-20 years if
Hmm.
all of our young children started doing this at a young age. It just helps their coping tools like
Yeah.
so much.
And it's not even just for the negative emotions. Like I have written in my girls' journals just a full page of I am statements, I am worthy, I am loved, I am accepted, I'm safe. And I just want them to practice reading those because it's not just for the negative things, it's for the positive things too. Because if you're constantly just putting out all your positives, but you're not feeding yourself, or you're putting out the negatives, but not feeding yourself the positives, you're going to be in a deficit because you're like, okay, well, I don't know if I'm not going to think that, then what should I think? And
That's right.
so giving them those affirmations, and especially starting with affirmations at a young age and in one spot, it's really just helping them build that self-confidence to be able to say, okay, well, if I'm not scared, what am I? I'm safe, you know? And
Yes.
even if you're just giving them, like when I journal, I'll take, verses out of the Bible and I'll write it down. And then I'll just journal off of that, because it's like, okay, well,
Yes.
what's God telling me about myself? Okay, then I'm going to journal about that. And I'm going to write it in a way that's affirming to me, and relate it to
Yes.
my life. And so, like I said, it's not just for the, because, when I started the journal, I was like, well, this would be great for all their big emotions that they don't know how to handle. But it's also a way of like, no, let's talk about what we do want. What do you want out of this year? Or before the school year, we journaled. And I was like, what are your goals for the year? What do you want to put pen to paper to? And where do you want me to come in and help you at? What are some markers that you want to have? Like, hey, in 3 months and 6 months, this is where I want to be. And so it really is a way for parents and kids to communicate in a way that doesn't get lost. And it also gets a little bit more concrete because it's like, okay, I've written that down. This is my goal. Mom knows my goal. Dad knows my goal. And, we'll check in, like they said. So, yeah, it's not just for the negative stuff, it's for the positive stuff too, because that I feel like that is just as important.
Totally. You made such a good point that if we don't have something positive prepared and handy,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
then if we're trying to get rid of some negativity in our lives, we don't have that thing to replace it with. And so our mind will automatically shift back to those automatic negative thoughts, those
Right.
ants, we call them, right?
Yeah.
And so it's so important to have, like you said, a reference sheet of, oh no, if I'm stuck here, with this negative experience I had at school or at work or whatever, I can flip to that page and you know see the affirmations that are true and get rid of
Mm-hmm.
those lies. So I
Mm-hmm.
love that you put that in there. The other
Mm-hmm.
thing I want to highlight is just as a mom myself, like you can get overwhelmed by all the things on Instagram and Pinterest, right? As a mom, like,
Yeah.
oh, we've got to get these books and we have to do these things and we have
Mm-hmm.
to keep a photo album and a digital album. And like, how am I going to remember all my kids' most
Right.
precious things? I love the idea of just having this, like by
Mm-hmm.
your nightstand or in a special place where it's out and you can see it so that you'll use it on a day to day basis. And
Mm-hmm.
then the fact that you created it to be a keepsake, like it's quality. It has a
Mm-hmm.
hard cover and it's something that you could tuck into a little keepsake box for them. And then when
Mm-hmm.
you send them out the front door, like I did with my oldest son, you can tuck
Yeah.
that little book in their suitcase and they can take it with them.
Yeah. It's a great way to just like there's so many lessons and like little phrases that my mom or dad has told me as I've grown up, and I can't remember them all the time. And I would love to be able to look back and be like, oh, when I was 15 going through my first breakup, look at this letter my mom wrote me, and the advice that she gave me then, and then I can take that and use it for my own daughter. And so I do love that. It's really been just a great experience for us.
So good. Okay, so tell us like the difference. Like, are dads getting into this? Because there's a hi mom and a hi dad. So, are
Yep.
dads engaging with their kids in this written way?
Yeah, so it's been very interesting. So since we have three girls, my husband's a full-on girl dad, and so he has a journal with each of our older two girls, and it's been very interesting to see the dichotomy between what they share with him and what they share with me. I get a lot of the very raw emotions, like friendships or battles that they and I are having, or maybe deep emotions, and they seek him for a lot of validation, a lot of, you know, how am I doing? Like, am I a hard worker? And they want him to tell them, I love you. And they get a lot of self-confidence from dad.
Mm.
And he's really feeding into that. And what's been really sweet is that they feed into him too. And sometimes they'll just write him a note and they'll say, we see how hard you're working. And for a dad to have that sort of just, just what's the word?
Like that
Support,
validation or
validation,
support.
and support from your kids to see, like, that they see how hard you're working, because that's such a hard job to be a dad. And for your kids to say, we see that, it brought tears to his eyes. He's like, I don't even, they don't, because, your kids seem so, preoccupied all the time. You don't think that they see all the hard work you're putting in. And for as much validation that he's giving them in their journals, they're giving it right back. And that's been a really sweet experience that they've had that I was not expecting.
Wow. That
Yeah.
makes so much sense too, because they
Yeah.
do have different relationships with their moms and dads. And so to have their own separate little book for dad and then
Hmm.
for dad to get those little warm and fuzzies like they
Yeah.
get too, it's just such a win-win. And I imagine that this doesn't have to be like, oh, a long drawn out thing. Like a couple
Oh, no,
sentences
it's
back
just,
and
yeah.
forth.
Our 6-year-old, I mean, she's a pretty good writer, but I mean, we for her, I put her sight words in her journal so that she's able to. It helps with writing practice and writing literacy, but also helps her kind of put her thoughts out there and get them straight. And sometimes it's just like, I love you. I see how hard you're working, or thank you for making my favorite food. And so our girls don't have phones, and the aspect of it that they really, really enjoy is it's like a little secret between mom and dad.
Oh,
It's their
yes.
secret because they don't share their journals with their sisters. And, my husband and I really don't try not to like share too much about what we're talking about with them. And so they love having this like secret communication of like, oh, it's just me and mom. And in the same way that
Yes.
our girls love, or our kids love to have just like mother-daughter dates or father-daughter dates, it's the exact same thing, but on a much smaller scale of just having that, that one-on-one attention. And they really soak that up.
This is so good. I'm
Yeah.
loving every bit of this. I'm like,
Yeah.
wow, my mind is just racing with different like ideas about how, I don't know, just I can imagine my daughter Annie, who's 10, using this journal and just having wildly different conversations with me than
Mm-hmm.
she does her dad. I mean, even when we spend one-on-one time together, it's so different the way she
Mm-hmm.
prepares for like a date with her dad. I mean,
Yeah.
she is like, I am going to be on time and early and ready for him
Yep.
to like
It means a
scoop me
lot.
up and take me. Yes. And get my hair right. And like really
Uh-huh.
just, she thinks about it for like 2 days ahead of time.
Mm-hmm.
And so I imagine that this connection is so much more than we even can like dream up until you start engaging the journal with your
Right.
child.
Right. And it can grow with you. And that's the great thing about it not being is about it being promptless is that it can grow with you as your family matures and as your conversations mature. And so what can start off as being just, quick little, 1 to 2 lines can really transform as they get older and things get more complex. And one of the things that I used the journal for this summer was I saw a situation that my oldest daughter was in where she was doing something and she was getting really frustrated, but she didn't give up and she kept going. And that experience didn't mean much to her, right? But I saw her perseverance. And so I wrote about that story in her journal because I wanted to see, you've done hard things before. Let's go back and look. The next time you're trying to do something and it's not working out the way you want it to, look, I've recorded plenty of times where you've done hard things in the past. And so even, as their kids get older, it's like, hey, listen, I know this seems big, but that seemed big.
Mm,
When you were little, that was big. And, my grandmother always used to say, little kids have little problems, big kids have big problems, but they're still problems, you
yes.
know? And sometimes you need somebody in your corner that's saying, hey, look, we've already done big stuff. This is just another big thing in a different shape. And
Yes.
so it really is, it can be whatever you need it to be on whatever day.
Mm. And again, we talk about this in therapy all the time. When you're going through something, I'll frequently ask somebody, when was a time in your life that you remember struggling to this degree? And they'll
Mm-hmm.
usually go, no, never, never. I've never struggled like this. This is the worst. And I'll say, okay, let's just rewind time a little bit. Let's just think about the most overwhelming thing that you've been through. And then they get into that and they're like, oh, that was bad. And I'm like, I think it was bad. And what did you
Yeah.
do to help yourself through that? Or who was in your corner? What was happening that helped you persevere and get through that?
Mm-hmm.
And then it's those same things and those same people that can help them today with their issues. So
Mm-hmm.
even better to have it written down so that you could go back through yourself and find those difficult times and go like, what did I say about how that turned out, or what I did to cope, or what did
Mm-hmm.
my parent, who has even more wisdom, tell me about that particular incident, and how could that help me today? So
Yeah.
oh, this is so good.
And that even goes for positive things. Like when we see our kids doing things like, hey, you know what, I've noticed, and we can just point out their positive habits. Like, hey, I've noticed that every day, you're getting up on time and you're eating your breakfast. And you know what? You've done it for 6 weeks and I've noticed that your grades are improving, or I've noticed that, you're doing better at your basketball or whatever sport you play. And so just a great way because our kid, we think when you're yourself, you think about yourself a lot, but we tend to have really negative thoughts automatically about ourselves. And so, and kids, especially as they're growing and they're changing so rapidly, everything's always new. But when you're a parent and you can look at them from the outside, as a parent, we already see them, we love them no matter what they're doing. And so we view what they're doing and we can write it out and be like, look at how well you're doing right now. The next time you kind of feel like you're in a funk, okay, well, when everything was going right, what were you doing? What were your habits? All right, well, let's just circle
Mm,
back and go back to that. You know what I mean? So it really
yes.
goes both ways, positive and negatives in our lives.
Yes, that's so true. You brought up something that I talk about, like what is the your wellness recipe? Like what are the
Yeah.
ingredients for you to be functioning at the most
Mm-hmm.
optimal level? And for kids, I think that's a great thing to write about in this journal is like, okay, you seem to be in a real positive mood. Things seem to be going really well. Like maybe you could tell me what all you're doing, on a
Mm-hmm.
day-to-day basis so that this could be kind of the ingredients for the recipe of the best you could be,
Mm-hmm.
and then go back and reference that. I love that. That is awesome idea. So
Yeah.
I got to ask you, Katie, like, you've been using this for a while with your own daughters. How do you kind of be sure that you're consistent with this, that the journal doesn't get lost, that all of a sudden you're not like, oh, it's been 3 weeks and we don't know where the journal is, or we aren't
Yeah.
using it anymore.
Yeah. So surprisingly, because things do get lost very easily, they have done it really matters to them. The journal really matters to them. And so I noticed that it's never not in the spot that they like to keep it in their room. So I let them keep it. And that way, when they have something that they want to write about, they can just bring it to me. But sometimes if I have something to write about, I'll be like, hey, can I use your journal? Or can I use our journal? And they'll be like, oh, yeah. They get so excited when they think I'm going to write something.
Yes.
Um, and so it matters to them. And so I've noticed that they take really good care of it. But I also don't push it. I also don't say, hey, we haven't written in our journal lately, because I never want it to seem like homework. I always want it to seem like an escape. And so it's like, and I've noticed, sometimes they'll go a few weeks without using it and everything's going fine. And then maybe something will happen at school and they come home and they go straight to their room. And the next thing I know, that journal's just getting slid under the door. You know what I mean? Like,
Yes.
read me. And
Yes.
so, and I'll open it up and okay, this is what's going on. I see how they want me to respond. And then I go find them. And so, yeah, it's just like, I never wanted it to be like, we have to get this done or there's a timestamp on it. And because I want it to last us, and I want them to be able to feel like they enjoy the time. It's therapeutic for them. It's not just another thing mom's making me do, you know?
Yes.
This is something that's
Yes.
really special between me and mom that we get to have. And so, and it
Yes.
also gives them a sense of responsibility and it makes them feel a little bit grown up because it's like, this is my journal and this is how me and mom communicate. And, I'm going to take care of it. And I get really excited when I have something to say. And so they've done a really good job with just kind of keeping it and knowing the importance of it and knowing what it's there for.
I think you hit the nail on the head when you said it's meaningful to them. So they're
Hmm.
going to keep it in a spot where they can access it and they know where it is when they want to use it. And you're keeping it a positive experience for them. You're not saying like, well, I got you that journal and it's been 3 weeks. Where
Right,
is it?
right.
Did you
Yeah.
even do you even have it? Because that could really turn them off to the whole process and maybe even plant a seed for the rest of their lives that, oh, journaling's this thing that has these rigid boundaries. And so making it a sweet connection and gesture and like leaving the ball in their court, but also
Hmm.
participating to the point where it's not like they're going, Mom, I put that under your door like a week ago. And like,
Right.
hello, do you even care what's in
Yeah.
there?
Yeah. I've also noticed that you can't take it personally. Like sometimes I'll write to them and I'll write them a story or I'll write them, like for their birthdays, I like to write them a letter, like how they've grown and what I'm excited for in their next year. And they don't always respond, but I don't take it personally and I don't say, well, the journal's not working because, maybe a month later they're giving it to me and it's something really big in their world that they're thinking about. And so you can't look at it as like, oh, if we're not writing in it every week or if we're not even writing in it every month, that it's not working because you never know when they're going to need it and when it's really going to matter. Because let's say you
Mm,
get it and you don't use it, and then, 6 months later, your son or your daughter hands it to them, and they're like, I did something, or I saw something, or I heard something, and it's makes me feel weird, and I don't want to talk to you about it face to face, but here it is. And it's like, oh, I'm really glad we had this. So,
yes.
yeah, it really can just adapt with however you want to do it.
Okay. So, and you have girls. Have you had feedback about customers who have purchased it for their boys? And are the boys getting into it? Do they require a different type of like conversation to get started in using this journal?
Well, that's what's so interesting is I think when you start it, if you can start it young, and even if you don't, boys have just as many emotions as girls do. They just vocalize it differently. And so, your boy may not, I've seen, boys maybe not write back as much, but they'll be a little bit more cryptic about it. And so you're like, okay, maybe this is something that I want to just dig in a little bit more. And, either I'll write back to them and kind of see how they respond. So it's like you may not get as much, but I can guarantee you that they're dealing and they're feeling the same thing that your girls are feeling. They're feeling insecure, they're feeling overwhelmed, they're feeling nervous, all those things. And they love just getting the notes of encouragement and the notes of love and the notes of, I mean, they want to be loved and they want to be doted on and they want to feel safe in their family just the same way girls do. And so they love to see those messages, from their
Yes.
parents.
Yes, you're so right about that. Before we came on, I was just telling you about how Lincoln has a journal, and it was something that we bought at a family camp. It was like branded, and I said, "You guys should really ought to start writing in their journal and just a little bit about your day, and then you can reflect back on it, later." And he found it, and he hadn't written in it in a year, and he just opened it up because it was by his nightstand, and so I think that's also like if you keep sort of a simplified room for them and really focus
Yeah.
on just minimalizing everything in there, that if they see the few things that really matter, then they'll access them and use them more. So he picked it up, and his brother came in the room and he goes, Parker, check this out. This is what I was doing on my birthday last year. This is
Yeah.
awesome. I wrote it in here. And he said, and I haven't written in it in a year, and now I'm going to start writing in it all the time because this was so cool that I can
Yeah.
even remember this is what I was doing. So he had that like little light bulb moment where it was like, oh, if you write things down, you can go back and like access those memory
Yeah.
dividends. They're on paper.
Yeah.
This is so cool.
Yeah. It really is. And then my girls will look back and like from when they started journaling till now, like, oh, our handwriting's gotten a lot better, Just
Yes.
little things how they get to see how they grow. I mean, my girls love to look at pictures of themselves as babies.
Yes.
And they love to hear stories about what things were going on when they were babies. And so they love for me to write like, hey, when you were a baby, this was your favorite food, or, because they love that sense of just family.
Yes.
And so, yeah, it is. And then if they also see me journaling a lot. And so they're like, okay, this is a great way. And that's the difference between, I've talked about this a little bit before on, my socials, but the difference between like a personal diary and a shared journal. And I really encourage both. I encourage if your kids are younger, you can start off, sharing a journal, but then really encourage a personal diary once they get a little bit older, because a personal diary is really great for internal reflection, very private thoughts, having a sense of security in yourself. And then a shared journal is all about connection. Okay, you know what? This is how I'm feeling, but I've always got family. I've always got mom. I've always got dad. And so it's like, okay, I'm branching out. And this is how I'm feeling. But at the end of the day, I'm still tethered. So,
Yes.
yeah, I think they
Yes.
both work hand in hand together.
Totally. I love that they see you journaling so they know that this is something that we could do for a lifetime. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And also like, hey, mom's journaling and I'm 6 and I could start doing that big girl
Yeah.
thing that mom
Yeah.
does. So that's really
Yeah.
cool. But then Dr. Leonard Sachs was on our show, I think right at the beginning of our show, episode 13, when he talked about the fact that girls don't keep diaries anymore. And so That lost art of writing your thoughts and reflecting and that introspection is really wreaking havoc on young girls. They're getting their identity from social media and music that they listen to, pop
Mm-hmm.
culture music. And that is so distressing for them to try to compare and measure up to these kind of false um, people out there that are portraying these
Mm-hmm.
amazing lives and no struggles and that sort of
Mm-hmm.
thing. And so he recommends, as a physician and a psychologist, that get your kids into keeping a personal diary and
Yeah.
let them you know do this as long as they will every day, so that they really can have that scheduled time to reflect on themselves and form their personal identity. So I love that you could start off with the shared journal so that they're getting that
Mm-hmm.
strength from you, their
Mm-hmm.
caregiver, their number one person and supporter, and then they branch off and they're able to give themselves that support, and they're ready when they leave the nest to continue that great habit.
Yeah. Yeah, journaling really is a journey of self-discovery in so many ways because you it's just a written form. I mean, in no other way, and not even through photographs, are you able to really like look back and see what was I thinking or what was my mindset like, you know? And see how you've grown or see the peaks and the valleys of your life like you can with journaling. It's really so therapeutic.
It is, and it's different than typing something on a
Mm-hmm.
computer. Like
Mm-hmm.
the handwriting piece of
It
it and the
slows you down.
paper. Yes, and the book
Yeah.
and the ability to take it around with you, and if the
Yeah.
power goes out, you still got your journal.
Right. You
So
know,
it's
one of the things when I was creating the journals, my husband was like, what's the difference between this and just your kids texting you? Like if you've got older kids, why, wouldn't they just text you? And I was like, well, here's the difference. One, not all kids have phones. But second of all, writing slows you down. It is so overwhelming. And I think adults feel this way all the time when you're typing something and you just get boom, 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 boom texts, you know? It's
yes.
very overwhelming. And writing slows you down and it allows you to kind of think about what you say and you can always erase, you know?
Yes.
It is so hard to just, when you send a text message and you don't know if that person saw it right then, you're like, oh, I didn't mean to send that, you know?
Yes.
And so it allows you to slow down a little bit. Let's think about what we want to say. And I think it helps with the way that we communicate with others because it's like, okay, I when I'm writing, I'm slowing down, and I can do that in my conversations too. Like I don't just have to rush ahead.
Yes. And so, even better reason to start this before you get a phone, so that your kids
Mm-hmm.
are conditioned to be thoughtful about what they're putting out there.
Mm-hmm.
And they're already trained in that way of, well, I can only kind of think as fast as my hand can write. And
Right.
so, when it comes to sending a text message to somebody, they're going to be prepared and conditioned to kind of slow it down and find the words that really truly match what it is you're thinking or
Mm-hmm.
feeling. Oh,
Yeah.
this is so good.
Yeah.
I was thinking, yeah, this is shared journal. We're right back and forth. And yeah, that sounds great. And I'll probably do it for 2 weeks and then like we'll just it'll just drop off.
Mm-hmm.
No, this is way different, Katie. This is
Yeah.
awesome. It really
Yeah.
truly is fostering this connection with your
Mm-hmm.
child and a way to get dad involved with some of these deeper conversations that I know he's
They
thinking
want to be
like,
involved in.
yes. Like, why do you
Yeah.
get all the good stuff, and
Yeah.
I get
Yeah.
like the meltdown at the end of the day or
Yeah.
the what's for dinner. And
Yeah.
so, a great way to include dads in this too. Hi, mom,
Mm-hmm.
and hi, dad journals. I love
Yep.
it.
Yeah.
So, Katie, you said you're on all the social media channels, right?
Yes.
Okay. So,
Yeah.
what's your handle? How do we find you and follow you?
You can find me on Instagram at Shared Journal Co. And then our website is at Shared Journal Co. We're on Pinterest, we're on Facebook. But it's all the same handle at Shared Journal Co.
At Shared Journal Co. You guys
Mm-hmm.
have to check this out. It's a beautiful website, gorgeous keepsake shared journals, and it's holiday time. When this episode drops, like you need to be shopping. So I would highly recommend you get one of these for each of your children, both a mom and a dad journal. If you're going to spend money on something quality for birthdays or holidays, please get a copy of this. And I'm thinking, if it's my kid's birthday and like, you know, they're going to be getting gifts from their friends. I don't like all the little kitschy gifts. Like, give my kid a shared journal so that they can use that with me and have a connection. I love that, you know? So having a couple copies on hand, one, if you fill all the pages of yours, you'll have another one ready for the next conversation. And two, you could have one ready for that birthday party that pops up that you're going, "Oh no, we weren't prepared." We've got an awesome gift right on our shelf at home that we could wrap up and give to people. So good.
Agreed.
Katie, thank you for joining us. Thank you for sharing this shared journal with our audience. We'll be sure that all the links are in our show notes so people can get right to your product and order in time for whatever holidays coming next. So thank you
Awesome.
for being with us.
Thank you for having me.
Yes, guys, I am just going to double emphasize the importance of connecting with your child. You heard me talk about how we sent our first little birdie out of the nest this week. And I'm so grateful that we have had some of these connecting moments, letters back and forth. You want to be sure that you are sending them out prepared and with a secure attachment, right? I always say securely attached, but free to leave. Free because they're prepared and ready for what life is going to throw at them next. So, with that, be sure to share this episode with your spouse. Get on, order your journals, and then I'll catch you on another episode of the Families of Character show real soon. Take care.